Back in open session. The first thing we have is taking positive steps of service award.
Yes, I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Pertzmore.
Yeah, so, do you want us to do this up here?
Yeah, you guys can come on up.
Yeah, come on up.
We're going to move the cookies.
We'll go right here. All right, let's do it. All right, so I'd like to nominate, or I'm nominating Carrie Barr and Jill Gord for the Taking Positive Steps for Service acknowledgement for all their efforts in creating an amazing youth and high school cheer program. Carrie and Jill have grown our youth program to include 78 K through 2 Little Devil cheerleaders, 69 youth cheerleaders grades 3 through 8, and 23 high school cheerleaders. In addition, they also ran a summer school class that had 67 participants. This program creates a positive environment at our high school and youth football games, and their halftime dances have been outstanding. Most importantly, they have built a program that helps students feel connected to their school and provides students with an opportunity to connect with each other. On behalf of the School District of Lodi, I'd like to take this opportunity to formally thank you for your time and service in creating such a fantastic program. And as always, we have $100 grand for each of you.
Thank you.
I'll take all three of your pictures. Anything you guys want to say?
I mean, we love what we do. We love all the kids we work with. We feel very blessed to be able to do this and give back to our community.
Because how many years have you guys coached the high school team now?
20 and 23.
And then they took over the youth program for me, thank goodness. 'Cause
We still like each other. We're
Yeah.
thankful for that most days. I think, we're just a really good team, and we work really well together, so.
We've had a lot of good support from the district over the years and parents, so we've been really lucky.
Clearly, with the number of kids that you have, they enjoy you too.
Yeah, Sky just talked about in high school, so she graduated in obviously 2016, there was 5. And now, what, you have 23, you said? So, it's pretty awesome.
It is, it's great.
Obviously, you create a very welcoming program,
Yes.
which is so important.
Most days. Don't ask about homecoming week.
Well, thank you.
All right, thank you guys so much. Appreciate it.
There are no presentations, correct? Public input. The purpose of the public input agenda item is for citizens and staff of the School District of Lodi to provide comments on any agenda item or to publicly address the Board of Education on items that pertain to school business. Portion of the meeting during which the comments of the public is invited shall be limited to 10 people and must be extended by a vote of the board prior to the beginning of the public input portion of the meeting. The amount of time allotted to each speaker will generally not exceed 3 minutes. If the speaker has questions for the board, they'll be duly noted, and responses will be provided in an appropriate manner. But the board cannot respond to individual questions or individual comments as part of the public input agenda item. As an additional reminder, the board cannot take action on any item that is brought forth during the public input session or on any item that was not posted on a meeting agenda. If you are providing comments, we would merely ask that you please come to the microphone and state your name and municipality of residence. There is no public input tonight. No one signed up for public input. Next, we have consent agenda items. Items in this section will be adopted as a group unless a board member requests a specific item to be removed from consent agenda and addressed separately. Approval of the minutes from the September board meeting. We have vouchers for payroll checks, direct deposits, accounts payables, ACH, and automatic clearinghouse payments and credit card payments. There are 2 fundraiser requests, one for Lodi Volleyball and the other for the Music Boosters. No fundraising reports, no field trip requests, no committee recommendation for approval. Under other, we have 4 Start College Now applications. We have the Soylent Client Assignment Agreement for Occupational Therapist Substitute, and we have a request for Sunday night activity. Under resignation and retirement, there are no retirements. Under resignation, we have primary school special education assistant, high school girls basketball assistant, a head softball coach, and an elementary school OSC physical education teacher. Under co-curriculars, there's a bunch of them here, and I'm going to try to read them all. Middle school, high school volunteer wrestling coach, boys basketball coaches, 2 assistants, 2 volunteers, and 1 middle school assistant. We have we have girl basketball coaches, middle school head and a middle school assistant. We have department chairs, K-12 in art, math, career and tech ed, foreign language, language arts, LMC coordinator, music coordinator, PE health, and science. And then we have department heads in grades 3 through 5 for language arts, science, social studies, and then high school language art department head, and then high school math department head, high school science department head, high school science social studies head, and high school special education department head. Grades 6 through 8, we have heads for language arts, math, science, social studies, special education, and then for K through 2, we have head people recommended for arts, math, science, special ed, and social studies. And then we have 15 first-year mentors and 14 second-year mentors. Did I get all that right? Or? Okay, good.
Nice job.
There's nothing under community program crew. Under regular staff, we have a primary school special education assistant. There are 2, a long-term 6th grade math, language arts support sub, a long-term high school social studies substitute teacher. There are 2 of those, and 1 OSC educational assistant is new. Under personnel other, we have 4 requests for leave without pay.
I would like to pull item 7.07, the Solent Client Assignment Agreement, and the request for Sunday night activity.
Make a motion to approve the rest of it?
And I will make a motion to approve the rest of the agenda.
Second.
Consent agenda.
With?
Oh,
It has to be
sorry,
read.
yeah.
Because there's-
Yeah. So that we get all that done.
With the addition of the approval of Deanna Russell as OSC Educational Assistant and approval of the bake sale fundraiser at the high school musical.
Okay, motion by Christie, second by
A
Angie.
second, yeah.
Any further discussion on that? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Passes 6-0. Now, the 2 things that you pulled. One you pulled for me and one you pulled for yourself. So those were under
7.07.
other. Thank you. So Soylent Client Assignment Agreement Occupational Therapist Substitute. Details.
Yeah, so I'm gonna turn this over to Adria Schrader. She can share why this is on the agenda.
Okay.
So Solient is a staffing agency that I have been working with. We have our district-wide occupational therapist is going to be out of the district starting soon until the end of this calendar year. This was a position that was posted in July-ish for any, candidates to fill, and we didn't have any applicants, so I started working at staffing agencies. And Solient is one of the only staffing agencies that I found that is willing to do in-person therapy. Everyone else is still working virtually. So it's a need for our students who have related services in their IEPs.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve Soylent Client Assignment Agreement.
I'll second.
So I made a motion and seconded by Barb. Is there any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That's a 6-0.
The one that I pulled was just a request for Sunday night activity, and I had emailed both Vince and Joe just a little bit more clarification on this because I was a little bit confused if we're approving a time or if we're approving the actual Sunday or if we had already approved a Sunday activity, because I know that the year had come through, or not the year had come through, but the list had come through of the year of what you were asking for. And as a newly high school parent, I can say that I am a little bit overwhelmed with just how much goes on, which I think is great. I think it's awesome that we do, as a district, offer so many things to our students. Sunday for a lot of people is a very sacred day for in the faith community. Some faiths, they go to church all day long on Sunday. But not just the faith community, it's a down day. That's your day of rest. And I feel like this is just one more day we're tapping into in the week. And I personally would just request to find a different day for this, if at all possible. Unless it was the day was already approved by us and you're asking for the time just to change. Is that what it was?
Well, I don't think it was approved by the board for Sunday. Those were Wednesday night activities.
Okay.
So the NHS induction ceremony has been traditionally on a Sunday in the time period between 2 and 5 o'clock. So it normally starts at 3 o'clock every year. That's been the situation over the years. This year, the conflict is that it was put on the school or on the district calendar for the 20th. And then we had found out that the musical is tearing down their set that day, which they've traditionally done on a Sunday after they're finished. So when they tear it down, they usually would be within that time period, 2 to 5, which has generally been accepted by the superintendent as a time that we can make exceptions for Sunday activities. Well, we're under the assumption that some of those students are gonna be in conflict, like some of them will be in the musical that will either be inducted into NHS or already are in NHS. So we were thinking we could fit them in both on that day. So they would start at like noon, they'd be done by pretty much by like 4, and then gives them a little time to go home and change, and then come back by 5 to have an induction ceremony from 5 to 6. My thought was, first of all, changing the date, because it would be a conflict, but then I thought if we were gonna take away a Sunday, I'd rather take away one Sunday afternoon as opposed to 2 Sundays. Because that's, normally we'd have the induction ceremony on a Sunday, normally and maybe you can tell me if I'm wrong, Vince, but most of the time the set tear down has been on a Sunday after the musical's finished.
So board policy states that activities can be done between Sunday between 2 and 5 with district administrator approval, and typically that's been given. But typically it's with a question, right? So like set tear down makes sense. It's musical's over, done. And if you don't get that set torn down right away, it just doesn't happen. And then the advisors are doing it. Or like we talked about this, sometimes there's a regional game falls on a Monday, right? So then a team will want to practice that day before and have a short practice on a Sunday afternoon. But that is always between 2 and 5, and that's in policy as it comes to the district administrator. This is outside the 2 to 5 range. That's why it comes to the board. And as Joe said, the question is it, do you just, you have one Sunday, some of those kids are already there, so you continue to use that same Sunday, so you're not going to 2 Sundays? Or do you do a different Sunday? As you know, as you said, the nights after school are just so difficult to get kids, National Honor Society kids, because they're involved in so many different activities, find a night that they're available to do that.
But so it can't be another date, like a Saturday? We don't have any Saturdays available?
I'm sure there are some Saturdays available, because there aren't a lot of athletic events on Saturday night, at least until the basketball season starts or wrestling starts, so it'd have to be later on Saturday night. But that is a possibility. It's always been Sunday, and it's always been at like 3 o'clock, so it's within that time period. So the question you're asking, is it a time change? Yes, it's a time change.
Okay.
So starting earlier with a set breakdown and starting a little bit later with NHS, so we could fit it all in on one day.
But so some of those kids will be there from essentially 12 to...
12 to 5:45, 6 o'clock, yep. Well, and they'd have a time period in there where they have to go home and change.
Oh,
Yeah.
sure.
So we wanted to give them a little bit of time in between.
Yeah.
And some of the current NHS members that help with the induction ceremony are in the musical. So it's already a conflict with them. But then there will be some kids that I would assume would be inducted,
Sure.
but not for sure.
I understand your reasoning on it. I respect that you don't want to have 2 Sundays taken away. I personally, I prefer that you would find a different date. That's just my opinion. So whatever happens. I just wanted to pull this out so that you guys
Let's keep
could
going,
all.
because I want to add, because I don't understand why it's on a Sunday, because as Christy said, that's our day, right, with our kids, and so could it be moved to a Saturday? Maybe not this year, but in the future, kind of thing. Could you?
I don't see why not.
Okay.
I mean, it could be moved to a Saturday for sure.
Okay. I mean, I understand set tear down. That makes perfect sense, right?
Yeah.
You're done, get it out of there, and get it done. Can't do it on Saturday. Do it on Sunday.
Yeah, because they used to try to do it on Saturday,
Yeah,
and kids
that's
were there till
no,
2 in the morning.
that's ridiculous.
So then they said, let's just do
Is
Sunday.
the last performance on Saturday?
Yeah.
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 Oh, yeah.
And then you're heading into Thanksgiving, so it just.
Yeah, no, that makes perfect sense.
And I had considered moving the NHS induction ceremony to November 6th.
Okay.
And then there would be a conflict, and it'd all be between 2 and 5 o'clock. But for the NHS advisor to have everything finished before November 6th is pretty difficult.
Okay.
There's a timeline that she has to follow, and it would have been very difficult to get it done by then.
Would that be a compromise? Let them do it this year, and then from in the future, they'll do it on Saturdays instead?
No, yeah, I would prefer that, for sure, would be a compromise. I don't know that I will necessarily vote for it, but I would love to see in the future it change. I just think that's an important day that we can protect for our
totally agree,
families.
yeah, I fully agree.
So, sure. Thanks for the conversation.
Well, I think if you want to change it to another day in years to come, you can, and if you want to continue to keep it on the Sunday, you bring it back to the board and you ask for board approval.
Well, if it's between 2 and 5.
They don't need a board.
They don't need.
Then my policy comes to me.
Yeah.
Well, if this situation arises
Yep.
again.
And that's why
I
it's here.
understand, it's
Yep.
between 2 and 5, you go to Vince, and this
Yep.
is separate. I'm saying if you want to switch it to a Saturday, then you switch it to a Saturday, and if you think it makes the most sense to keep it on the day that you keep it on, if it falls outside of 2 to 5, then bring it back to the board to discuss.
Sounds good.
So I'll make a motion to approve the Sunday night activity request.
I'll second.
Okay. So a motion by myself and a second by Scott. Any further discussion on it? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Is anyone opposed?
Aye.
Okay,
Okay.
so 5-1, it's passed. Next, we move on to a change in the way the board is hearing stuff. Communications has been moved up in front of the agenda, so we have administration reports now. Lodi High School.
Guess I'll just keep going.
Yes.
Thanks, Adam. So first of all, you can read the report, but there was, I wanted to put in an email that was sent to our athletic director, Sue Mefford. I'm obviously not gonna read through the whole thing, but it was a gesture from one of our JV football players, and I'm sure it had a lot to do with some of the expectations that their coaches have for them. So I put in the entire email. I took out the name of that parent from Bigfoot, but I'm just gonna read one part of it. It's right kind of in the middle. It said, he was coming off the field, he noticed some JV players, and they were kind of putting some things away, and one of the JV players talked to this parent and said, only one spoke, but he thanked the two of us for driving up from by the state line to support our players and to support the JV football program and wished us a good night. He was genuine, he was laden with gear and could have just kept going, doing what he was doing and ignored us. But he did the best thing. It was after the game and it was 5 seconds, but it was one of the best moments of my long night. So Bigfoot has been struggling a little bit. Their JV2 team had been struggling a little bit this season. There was one kid that did this. So one of the things that I emailed Dave about, Dave Pohl's our head coach, and a few other coaches about, is those little gestures are so important, because it's not just about how that JV2 player looked, but it also is a gesture about like what that team looks like, what that school looks like, and what that community looks like. So that person going back to Bigfoot that night has a good feeling about Lodi. So we really appreciate that from all of our coaches and athletes when they do that. So I just wanted to put that in there. Student representative for the school board. So we do have a new student representative for the school board. Her name is Anna Ladwig. So she's a 12th grader. There was an election last week between her and 11th grader Elena Hatley. Either one of them would have been great representatives of the school. The student body voted for Anna last week, so she will be sworn in at the November meeting. So she will be there. She could not be here tonight. She's in Hawaii, so.
Sure.
Yeah, she has student election.
Yeah, wow.
Student rep, you get to go to Hawaii, I guess.
You couldn't zoom in?
Yeah, that'd have been nice. So
Different time
it's Anna Ladwig. We made it through homecoming, so homecoming ended Saturday night with our dance. There's one thing that I wanted to mention was our Powder Puff fundraiser. Took a lot of effort from a lot of different people, and we raised $2,815. Half of that, $14,007.50, is going to Reach Out Lodi, and the rest of it is going to the Carson Schmudlock family. So we'll be presenting them with checks next week. So I really appreciate everybody that put some time into that. It was definitely a group effort. We also had our career fair and service day activities last week. And the career fair, we had 32 presenters. I want to personally thank two of our board members, Angie and Adam, who were able to come in and talk about their careers and what that was like. I was really interested in Angie's path and where she had started and where she had gone, because I think one of the things that our high schoolers don't realize, it's not a straight line. There's lots of things that can happen. So we had 16 Lodi High School alumni, we had 10 former and present Lodi High School parents, we had 5 Lodi High School coaches, and we had 2 school board members present, and then there were other presenters that could present. I want to thank Paula Tun for the service day, getting that ready to go, and then Pam Cunningham and Lynn Werder as our 2 admin assistants in the office. Putting together schedules for every single student was a monumental task. It took them pretty much the entire week to do that. We surveyed our kids to see where they wanted to go. We also surveyed our kids before the event to see what careers they were interested in so we could bring in as many people as possible. So I appreciate all the presenters and then Pam and Lynn for all that they did. One other thing, or a couple other things I want to mention, we have parent-teacher conferences coming up October 20th, and we also have FAFSA presentations, so we have someone from Madison College coming up to talk to the parents of our seniors, to talk a little bit about financial aid for college, which we've done in the past, and there are 2 virtual events, there's one that's going to be coming up October 24th that they also can attend. Some student highlights, we have 2 students, Lily Strong and Keegan Fleischman, that were nominated for the 2023 Heisman High School Scholarship. They must have a 3.0 cumulative GPA and be proven leaders in the school, so I'd like to congratulate Lily and Keegan. And then there's some information about our exchange programs. We do have our exchange program for Thailand leaving in less than a month, which is pretty exciting because we haven't been to Thailand, and then the students haven't been here for 2 years. And then we're trying to ramp up our Germany and Spain exchange programs. I think there's still a few parents that are a little leery about travel and students, so we're doing our best to advertise that because we're gonna have some German students come in May. So we need to have some host families, so if anybody's interested, let me know. And that is about it. So thank you.
Thank you. Curriculum.
So looking at the board report, I just want to say congratulations to 2 of our middle school science teachers, Sarah Hook and Michelle Howe, who each earned $200 grants from the Wisconsin Society of Science Teachers. These funds will use to incorporate new inquiry-based lab materials. So that's exciting, and kudos to them for putting those grants together. We had a lot going on our September 30th PD Day with staff. I provided an update regarding some literacy curriculum work that occurred during that day for our Lodi Elementary School 3rd grade educators, and then also our OSC educators. On that day, we also started to circle back and discuss the Align by Design model at the high school level. So over a decade ago, Vince, the board, and the high school staff brought this model to Lodi High School, in which we aligned ourselves to the ACT College Career Readiness Standards. And we've observed a significant increase in student achievement as a result over that time, over the past decade. The issue we're running into is that many staff were not here for that initial training and alignment over a decade ago, and therefore we're doing some maintenance activities with everyone as outlined in the board report, and this is just part of periodic curricular maintenance that we do to ensure that there's not implementation drift over time. So I'm very thankful to our high school staff for engaging in this work on those days. I know it takes time to do this, but it's important work so that we can continue to anchor to that foundation that was set so long ago. And then finally, I just provided a note that our teams continue to review, celebrate, and be responsive to our state assessment data results. It's just one data point that we take into consideration along with our local data and classroom observations, and we'll be providing some further updates in the future to the curriculum committee and then also the full board.
So can you make one thing clear, the 3rd grade professional development for phonics and reading and stuff? So we've done that at the primary school, and now it's finally moving, not finally, but it's ready to move to 3rd grade now. That's what you're talking about.
We've spent a good chunk of the past 2 years to align our curriculum work, literacy curriculum work at the K2 level to the science of reading and the new Wisconsin Model Academic Standards. We are now moving that work into the elementary level. So those discussions and the PD and actually changing what happens in the classroom in regards to teaching and learning will start to occur this school year.
And that will follow those kids who learned it in the primary school.
Yes, the phonics to reading program is one that we started last school year about in October. So this will be the first school year that students at the primary school would have seen it since the beginning of the school year. But
Okay.
that scope and sequence is now in place, kindergarten through third grade, with third grade starting the phonics reading program this year. So those students will see that continuation who had it in second grade last year, starting in October, they'll see that now into third grade.
Okay. And then fourth, fifth, on?
So the phonics reading program itself stops at grade 3,
Okay.
and we're currently in conversation and reviewing resources with the fourth and fifth grade team in regards to a scope and sequence that fits them with phonics and word study. It gets a little bit more complex when you hit about fourth grade. You're looking at more multisyllabic words, Latin roots, things like that. And so we're finding a program that we find that fits the scope and sequence that we've already put in place. So we have that step up, right, from third grade, but it also fits our teachers and what they can, and it's gonna work well with them. So
Thank you.
it'll be a little bit of time though, but that's where the focus of the work
Right.
is right now.
LCAT, Terry's not here, you can read the report that's in there. Student services.
Yeah, we have some new faces joining our therapy team for a portion of the first semester. We have Mackenzie Bugg, she's completing her practicum hours with speech-language pathologist Nora Mack. Rachel Bloom is completing her practicum hours with speech-language pathologist Ashley Anderson. And then Erin Frank is the long-term sub that will be filling in for Crystal Schaff. She's been able to shadow Crystal a couple of times, so we're hoping for a really smooth transition when Crystal is out of the district. During our professional development day on September 30th, special education staff received training on 2 topics. During that day, determining extended school year and gaining a better understanding of specially designed instruction. And our district social emotional learning team also met during that professional development day. We began to do our content review for our current practices, and we were able to refocus our work based on our strategic plan and building scorecard, and we began to do the SWOT analysis of our current practices. And finally, responsive classroom school visit. Margie Dorshort was at our elementary school and primary school last week. This was part of our training contract with Responsive Classroom that took place last school year for all of our educators. And the purpose of that visit is to observe some of the unstructured settings at school, so things like cafeteria, hallways, playgrounds, and also our classrooms. And she meets with the school leadership teams for a debrief to just to share her observations and to provide feedback for us to continue to grow.
Thank you. Primary school.
So, at the primary school, we had a really enjoyable week with homecoming weekend. There were a couple pictures there of some kids dressed up in their pajamas the one day. So, that was really enjoyable. And obviously, as the month of October, we had 4K Fall Fest last Thursday, and we'll have our Halloween parade coming up at the end of the month. So those are a couple of social activities. In regards to the strategic plan, Pillar 1, Preparing for the Future, on our Friday collaboration day, the teachers had to take the iReady assessment. It was a great opportunity as grade level teams for them to really look at it from the student lens and thinking about what areas of curriculum do we really want to be focusing in on. Obviously we have our standards and we have our curriculum that we're focusing, but just kind of looking to see what is the wording of some of the questions, which also goes to the second part, which is test taking. You know, sometimes we need to make sure that kids know how do they need to show their learning, kind of like for the FNP or the Fountas Pinnell assessment. We ask them to retell the story, and they need to be able to do certain things to show and demonstrate their knowledge. It's the same thing with iReady. We wanted the teachers to have that opportunity to look at that from that lens of the student and then think about their instruction and how to support those areas. So some great takeaways there. Pillar 2, nurturing the whole child, as Ms. Schrader had said, we had Margie come and just give us some feedback as far as what we are currently doing with Responsive Classroom in our morning meeting. And so from that report, we'll be working as a PBS team and just looking at areas of celebration and then areas that we want to continue to grow and improve.
That's okay. Thank you. The elementary OSC school.
Yeah, so just a couple things. First of all, thank you for approving the map. If you haven't had a chance to look at it, we really enjoyed it. And then it was just a great opportunity for kids to be able to see the power of volunteerism at work firsthand, as they got to watch it change from the beginning of the day to the end of the day. And then also, Margie did visit us as well, and so we had a really good conversation. One thing I put in there that just was a highlight. I think it speaks really truly of our staff, and for someone to notice it on one time being in our building, but that staff demonstrated a leadership style that was assertive and yet approachable while leading with authority. They were kind, firm, and consistent. I think that just sums up our staff, and it's just been evident to me of how proud I am of the work they do on a daily basis. And then there's just some opportunities for learning that we've enjoyed with the community, and then also just within our building as well. And then also wanted to just highlight my first experience with Lodi Homecoming, and just how wonderful of a job I think that the high school does. And then also just, especially, you know, homecoming can sometimes be a time where we look inward, right, at our own community, and we're proud of things, and I think that's great. But to have a day of service built into your homecoming, I think is great for, not only for our high schoolers, but for our community to see that we are about service, even at a time when we really tend to focus on ourselves. And so that was great to have some high schoolers visit our building and connect with them and see our students interacting with them and start getting their minds thinking about what it looks like for them when they get to the high school. And so that was really a good opportunity for me. And then also, thankfully, we haven't seen any pictures around of this yet, but I also got to help out with the Strive for Pride reward from last year. One reward was extra recess, and the other reward was that they got to dress the principal, and that didn't happen last year. And so they got to dress me, so that was, we threw that in with homecoming week as well.
Nice.
Thank you. And then middle school.
Yeah, good evening, everybody. So we finished up our already diagnostic, and for the pre-assessment in the fall, the major way we use our data is to just identify students that are in need of more support. So trying to make either whether we get them more minutes or they need some different resources, we're just identifying kids that need more support or who need more challenges. So those are two ways we use those, and we look forward to trying to help our students grow as much as we can as the year goes on. I want to thank our staff for this first month this year has just been awesome and super positive. And speaking of which, I want to welcome these two new staff members, Dan Thielen and Cheyenne Sarto, who join our staff as educational assistants. And you know, our educational assistants just come right in the building and they hit the ground running. And they're thrown right into the fire with some challenging students, and these two have been amazing additions for us. And I do believe, like last year, I think our middle school was at full staff for like 1 month in the entire year. So like we've been at full staff for like 1 month this year. So that's been a good change for us. Just a couple more highlights. I want to highlight some field trips that happened. 6th grade did a Devil's Lake field trip. So they do this as kind of a community building, and it's one of the first times since, you know, 2nd grade that OSC and the elementary school comes together back into one grade again. And so the 6th grade recognizes that and as like a welcome to the middle school and trying to get everybody back together again and breaking that ice and forming new relationships. I just really appreciate the effort they go to build those relationships with their students and peer-to-peer. Another field trip I just want to point out, and this has been going on for a long time, the 8th grade did travel to the American Players Theater, and I don't remember the name of the play they saw. They saw Love's Labor's Lost. So each year the 8th grade spends the first month of school reading a play that they're going to go see at the American Players Theater and learning a little bit about Shakespeare and getting some background, and that's an experience that's super unique for us, and we're super glad that we can offer that opportunity for our kids. I want to thank Patty Heinzman and Sarah Gleiss for putting that together for our students. That's all I have from the middle school.
Thank you. Administrator.
Well, first I'd like to start off just by thanking our staff for the beginning of the school year. It has been phenomenal. You walk in each building, you can just feel the positivity, and I want to thank our administrative staff because it starts there with them as well. I'd like to echo what you've been hearing about homecoming. I think it was phenomenal. I think you have to manage a lot of extra energy and enthusiasm and distraction, and I think our staff and our administrative team did a phenomenal job, and it was just a great week. Also, hats off to Joe and Jason and everybody else, all the other people who were involved in the Powder Puff activity. Talk about just such a walking into that compared to what it used to be. You know, where when I first came to the high school, parents ran it. By the time towards the end, no parents were there. And walking into the stands, just seeing parents there, all the community there smiling, laughing, constantly going on. Joe announcing 2 different games going on at once. You know, and just constant activities, and kids just smiling and having a blast and making memories, and for a good cause. It was phenomenal. So just really appreciate that. Couple of reminders, our annual meeting is coming up, so that will be 2 weeks from tonight. It will be held on the 24th at 7 p.m. in the LGI at the high school, so please, everyone plan on attending. And the board also has professional development activities next Monday. We also have a meeting. Drew Harwick will be here for our last professional development meeting. Again, remember 5:30, we'll have some food, and then we'll start at 6 o'clock. And again, the collaboration or collective commitments that we've come up with are all in front of the board as well that we've worked on. Light pole update. 4 of our 8 light poles have come down on the Highway 60 field. They were a little more difficult than anticipated, heavier than anticipated. So the other 4 are scheduled to come down hopefully on Friday, weather permitting, Friday afternoon. We also, the Optimist Club is sponsoring a forum for the 42nd Assembly District candidates, John Plummer and Teresa Valencia, on Wednesday, October 19th from 11:15 to 12:15 at the Performing Arts Center of the high school. We always appreciate the Optimist Club holding these type of activities at the high school because it allows our students to participate. As you may or may not are aware, John Plummer has agreed to attend the event, but only do so virtually because of security concerns. When asked about specific threats around this event, Representative Plummer indicated to the Optimist Club he's received anonymous hate mail. The Sheriff's Office has been asked to increase patrols around his home, and that Office of the Capitol has been boarded up due to the protests that happened. It's disheartening and disappointing that any public official has to worry about their safety in attending an event of this nature anywhere in our country, but especially here within our district. But obviously, when someone mentions security concerns near or around any of our schools, we take those very seriously. Because we'll have over 500 students and staff in the building that day, plus visitors. I've reached out to Columbia County Sheriff Roger Brandauer and to Lodi Police Chief Wayne Smith in regards to the safety and security of this event. I've asked either of them if they're aware of any specific security threats which should prevent us from hosting this event, and they both indicated they're not aware of any specific threats or any reason we should not hold it. I've also sat down, met with Chief Smith to talk about security that we need to have in place for the event on October 19th. So. If anybody's aware of any specific concerns or threats, please contact the Lodi Police or Columbia County Sheriff's Department. And we appreciate their cooperation and partnership. So with the information we have from law enforcement, we are planning on holding the event as scheduled. The event remains open to the public. For those who choose not to attend the event in person, the forum will be recorded and posted on the Lodi Optimist Club website a few days after the event. I will also be sending out a letter regarding this to parents within the next few days, just to families, just to make them aware of those concerns as well. I didn't want to send it out too far in advance, so within a week, so probably go out either Wednesday or Thursday as well. And I also received an email regarding our football program from New Glarus, the superintendent. She just wanted to reach out and compliment us on our football team and coaches. First, they're having a great season. They have an excellent team, but they were impressed by the sportsmanship when they played. It was obviously a great start for our team. We were up 28-0 for the first quarter, and you could have run up the score. But it was obviously some changes were made that didn't happen. And she said she's seen scores this year where there's 70 or 90-point differentials, and thankful our team didn't take that approach. As we all know, sports are about winning, but they're also about sportsmanship and building character, and it's obvious that your team has taken it to heart. And again, I have great respect for Jennifer Thayer and Jeff Eichelkraut, who's the principal there and has been a longtime football coaches in this year, but I know with a lot of respect back and forth between those programs. And again, New Glarus had a really rough night. Right? They had 2 fumbles. They fumbled the ball twice within their own 25-yard line in the first 2 of the first 3 possessions, which then kind of snowballed on them. But again, I think our program always takes pride in how we treat, as we talked about earlier, with the JV program and also the varsity program as well. So appreciate that.
An amazing story, thank you.
Yeah.
Board president report. So from hearing all that stuff at the front of the meeting, I mean, I can't help but, I mean, when I read through that stuff, thank you to the administrators and the staff for sharing those amazing examples of our students and our staff collaborating, brainstorming, and learning very important critical thinking skills. And also for showing us our students which you didn't know we'll talk about, in science and social studies and language arts, and field trips experience engaging hands-on opportunities, right? Leadership, teamwork building, and real-world skills in diplomacy, and even live theater. I love having this up front, it's amazing. So, thank you. And then, thank you, Brent and Vince, on getting the Highway 60 poles out as quick as possible. I mean, to secure bids, find bids, secure, and Neil too, right? To get all that done, even though it didn't get accomplished. Thank you for doing that so quickly. And then there's one thing for the board here. So Lodi and Lake Wisconsin Chamber has an announcement that they're purchasing a building, and then they'd like to invite one member from the Lodi School District to go to see this new building on October 19th from 4 to 7. It's casual, share ideas, good food, get caught up with other members of the chamber. Vince has asked if there's any board member who would like to go to represent the school.
October 19th at what time?
4 to 7 p.m. Do you have to go from 4 to 7? No, sometime between 4 to 7.
It's just like an open house.
Just see their space.
So would someone like to volunteer to do that?
Day of the week is it?
The calendar, so it must be
It's a
open.
Wednesday.
It's a
It's
Wednesday.
next Wednesday.
I cannot.
I can probably go.
Want to go represent school?
Sure.
Thank you very much.
So it's at their new property?
It's at their new property, yeah.
Okay. Which is the old,
Mhm.
okay.
You can say it, which is the old.
Well, I could
Grace
say.
Valley Church.
Yeah.
Yep, Old Grace Hill Church.
Awesome.
And I
I'd be
forgot
happy to.
one thing in my report,
Yeah.
is I received documentation that, congratulations to Adam Steinberg, who's achieved level 3 in the WASB member recognition program. So WASB recognizes board members for their efforts in leadership and board development through their member recognition program. Points are awarded to school board members for their attendance and their involvement in WASB programs and events. So congratulations, Adam. And this is also a good way to remind people that the fall regional meeting's coming up for Region 10, which will be held Thursday, October 20th at Trappers Turn, Wisconsin Dells. So you all should have gotten information on that, but I apologize for forgetting about that.
So agenda items, 901 is the Medical Advisory Committee.
Yeah, hopefully short and sweet. The medical advisory team met on October 4th, review our COVID mitigation measures. Their recommendation right now is to keep everything as is. The community level in Dane County has bounced between low and medium, and Columbia County State at low community transmission level right now. So their recommendation is to keep it as is. So the board can do, and I think I say this every month, they can do one of three things, right? They can choose to adopt a recommendation, do nothing, and the recommendation that are in place stands, or they can choose not to follow any of the recommendations.
So we just had that vaccination clinic at the schools. How many people showed up to that? How many
We
kids?
had 147 vaccinations given. Reen, do you know
For
how
all
many
different kinds of
kids?
things. 90?
We had 90-some signed up. We had a couple not show up, but we also had a few others that were there that ended up taking vaccinations that weren't signed up.
So just under 100. So that's amazing. Yeah. Hopefully they gave out a lot of COVID vaccinations.
Glad you added vaccinations at the end there.
Yeah.
Gave out a lot of food.
Hopefully not any COVID.
Funny. So again, no action is really necessary,
Oh, because it's the same.
because we're just
No
keeping
change.
our
Got it.
mitigation place as is.
Strategic plan implementation.
Yeah, so the School District of Lodi had a community group facilitate strategic planning process. I know I say this over and over again, but my job is kind of the chief communicator for this district. So this group facilitates strategic planning for behalf of the district, which ultimately resulted in conversation for our future events, which attended by over 100 community members in May and June of 2021. The strategic plan was created from the input gathered at these events and approved unanimously by the board. To ensure this document just didn't sit on a shelf and to work on the priorities set by the community, the district has developed district-wide balanced scorecard and building-wide balanced scorecards. The balanced scorecards are snapshots of our current state and how we aligned our work to our strategic plan. The balanced scorecards are vital measures. So just like when I go to the doctor, they check my vital signs, my heart rate, my blood pressure, reflexes. The scorecard represents the vital signs we check in our district. And this will help measure our progress on our highest priority strategies that we are using to make progress in the pillars given to us by the community. The district has created a video explaining the district balanced scorecard. In addition, each building has created a video on the building and balance scorecards from each building level. This allows the board members, along with families, community members, to reference these materials prior to and after the board meeting. We don't plan on showing any of the videos tonight, but we'll answer any questions the board may have. And we will obviously be providing updates on the progress on the balance scorecards mid-year at the end of the year. So one of the questions that always comes up, or not always, but will typically come up throughout the year, I'll pass that down, is how did we come up with the numbers on the scorecards, right? So if you look at the percentages that are on there, so, you know, right, we want 100% of our kids to be proficient in everything, right? That's not realistic that we can have that. So what we look at is we start looking at the data that we have, and where are we currently at, and then we use the research that's been done on school accountability and improvement on how to set goals. And if you look at this, is kind of the chart that we use when we set goals. When we talk about, like, if we want a nominal goal or a small goal, do we want a moderate goal or do we want an aggressive goal? And what that looks like, a percentage increase when we're talking about, you know, proficiency or things like that. You know, in a classroom, you can put a pretty high percentage on to be aggressive. When we start talking like a district-wide movement, that number's got to be smaller because we're moving it's such a big move and so many kids. So, as I said, sometimes when you look at those numbers, like, how'd you come up with those numbers? We use, you know, educational research to kind of help us base those numbers on how we set them, not only at the district level, but then at the building level as well. And then again, we'll look at it mid-year to see if we are making the progress that we hopefully are making, that we set the goals appropriately, and at the end of the year as well, as we go through this. So I would open it up to questions, and obviously the whole administrative team, we're all on video, so they're all ready for any questions you may have of them regarding this plan. And then at the end, I would ask that the board approve the district and building level scorecards, and then we will place them on our website like we did last year.
And Nick, I feel like for, in the curriculum meeting too, I asked that question. And I think you were saying even though we weren't technically like super low, we were pretty aggressive on most of our goals, so, right?
Most of our goals, we set an aggressive goal for. I think an example of one where we pulled back and set either a nominal or moderate goal would be our Zello activities at the middle school, where we're already at like 96% of students completing that last school year. So that was an example of one where we would have maybe set like a nominal increase, but almost all other goals, I believe, are set at the aggressive range for the building.
Nice.
And just for the community, if you go into this document, there's a memo, strategic planning implementation document, and it has a link to every one of the videos we're talking about that the board were able to access and the community can access as well.
Yeah, looking out to the community, I would highly recommend you go through those videos and all these scorecards because they cover everything.
Yeah, it's a lot of time, a lot of effort on behalf of the district, on behalf of each of the buildings. Each building has developed an impact team to help facilitate this process from the building level as well. So staff members have a voice in this as well, and in, I know a couple of videos you have staff members who joined building administrators as part of that, and just depending on timeline if they could make that work or not. And when we do a presentation, around February on this, we'll have impact team members coming and sharing that information. You'll have staff coming and sharing that information.
And I want to say thank you to the teachers and all the staff too, because there's a lot of work, I'm sure, because we keep hearing about it and keep seeing stuff, and we don't even have to do all that, so thank you.
Yeah, and again, it's based on the priorities that were set by our community. I think Dr. Carl says it very well, it's the gift of knowing, we don't have to guess. We know what the priorities are. And the double, and I talk about the double gift. I talked about it at the beginning of the school year and the last year. And now the double gift our community has given us, the strategic plan, the priorities, and passing of the referendum. Again, we're very thankful of that. That allows us to leverage these scorecards and to implement our strategic plan that way. So they wouldn't happen without both those things coming together.
So I get this chart that you showed us, but help me understand, and maybe Nick, you can. I open this up, and for example, not looking to, I don't know if pick on is the right terminology, but I'll just say pick on any one school specifically. But for example, when I pull up the middle school balanced scorecard under vital measures and I look at by the end of 2022-2023 school year, 58% of the students will score in the proficient/advanced section of the iReady reading assessment. I look at that and I think 58% seems like a really low percent to score at that level. To me, that means roughly 4 out of every 10 kids aren't. So help me understand that number, and if I'm correctly understanding it, and if that means that there are issues downstream as to why we're happy if 6 out of 10 kids score proficient or advanced for this metric.
So for that cohort of students, our students who are in grades 6 through 8, that data is based on last year's measure, so where they came in, and then setting an aggressive goal, which would be a 6% increase, I believe, is what we set for that one.
So 58%, which to me is a pretty low number, if I'm understanding this correctly, is 6% higher than what it's been in the past. So
That it was end of last year, yep.
So am I wrong in my thinking that seems like a really low percentage?
I think over time, we're looking to continue to increase that, and what this gives us is a tool to kind of set what we would hope would be adequate goals to do so as we step towards something that would look higher. I would say the iReady assessment in math is a rigorous assessment.
This is reading that I'm looking at.
Oh, and reading. Yeah. I thought you were referencing math. Was it
Well,
reading?
I mean, one is 58 and one is math is 59, so I guess they're very similar.
So usually to score in the proficient range on the Ford exam, whether it be, or not the Ford exam, the iReady exam, whether it be math or reading, a student would have to score in the 65th percentile. So it's not always even average is scoring proficient, if that makes sense. So sometimes that also, when you're saying, well, 58%, 50-some percent are scoring in the proficient range. To even score in the proficient range, you would have to score in the 65th percentile nationally on that assessment, if that makes sense. So sometimes that can, and this goes back to something I think I said last year, and I want to be cautious about how I say this, because of course we want to always be moving our student body towards a proficiency level that would be higher than where we're currently at. I would hope we would continue to grow and we would be much higher than in the 50-some percent that you just noted. But also recognizing that, I would say this is, I'm trying to just remember exactly when the WKCE occurred. There was a time when the state assessment, right, we gave the WKCE, and do not quote me on this because I'd have to go back and look exactly what the numbers were, but the proficiency rate in the state was much higher. Let's just throw a number out there, 70%, okay? Maybe even higher than that. Let's just throw a 70%. And over the course of like a year, that dropped considerably. Same test. And what was it? The benchmark changed, right, at that time. So imagine a high jump. Right, and here was the high jump, and then all of a sudden the next year, no, to meet proficiency, your high jump bar has to be here. An assessment like the iReady assessment has also mirrored itself to that level of rigor for proficiency. So that's why to even score in the proficient level on the iReady assessment, you typically have to hit right around that 65th percentile nationally. So I don't know if any of that makes sense, but short of it, you're correct on the data where it's at. We want to continue to move to a place where we're higher. Yeah.
It's also hard to look at it from just one school's perspective. What are our other schools around us? Where are their proficiency numbers at? Are we doing good compared to others, or Are we low
We
compared to
don't
others?
have the
or-
ability to compare with the iReady assessment. We do have some ability to compare with things like the Ford exam, you know, to pull and see how are we doing compared to our conference, and how are we doing compared to CISA 5, for example. We have 35 schools in CISA 5, which we can do. We can pull some of those comparison reports. When you look at like our high school ACT score, 10 years ago, well, right before Align by Design, that was about 12 years ago, right, 13 years ago?
Yeah, our ACT scores, before we started Align by Design, we were the lowest score.
In the
Our 10-year average was the lowest in the conference.
And this year, we tend to be first, or not this, recently, we've since Align by Design, we've moved up to being first or second typically in the conference, and usually right at the top of the 35 schools in CISA 5.
It speaks to, the Align by Design piece speaks to the power of alignment, right? And we've talked about that with strategic planning. That's the power of the strategic planning. It allows us to align the work that we are doing. When we start seeing areas that we're not doing well, and it's typically, it's not because we don't have great staff who are working very hard, it's typically because we're not aligned. So that's what we have been working on, like on our collaboration days, and that's the pieces that we've been working on. Nick's talking about collaboration days, and some of the things have been done at the primary schools and middle school. When you hear these administrators talk about their different reports, they're talking about a lot of different pieces where we're realigning things to see some significant bumps in these. Because I would agree, these are areas we need to be better at. There's no question about it.
So you look at the primary school balanced scorecard and you look at the percentages and they're much higher. And then you go to the elementary school and then you see the percentages take a dip. And then you go to the middle school and you see the percentages take another dip. So the question that I have for you, is there something that needs to be looked at where the kids, say, come to the middle school and maybe they're not where they need to be to score where we want them to score to be proficient or advanced, where in earlier grades are things that to be done to help them to score when they get, you see what I'm saying?
I absolutely do see what you're saying.
I mean, you see the numbers that I'm looking at, and it's the blue section of the scorecards. Like, they're high for our younger students, and as they get a little older, lower.
And then we dip back up, and then we come back up usually
So
around high school level.
What's the reasoning? What's going on? I mean, I know these are not questions you can answer, Nick. I get it. I'm just looking at this, and that's what comes to mind. So I wanted to ask.
I think the
you guys
difficulty
about it.
sometimes is it's hard to pinpoint, here's one thing that it is, right? And it's because there's so many variables. COVID is a variable that we have to account for, right? So we have to bring that into it. When we look at things like the iReady assessment, we look at multiple data points. We look at iReady, we look at forward, we look at in the classroom, et cetera. And there are some areas definitely that when you look at across all those data points and you talk to staff, you notice that, hey, we have to come in and we have to intervene in some way and make some changes. Enter things like a new middle school math program that we're going through a full pilot this year. And going to be paying close attention to the results to see how that is affecting things, how we're looking at primary schools.
Is it just a new middle school math program, or do kids need something before they get to middle school for that math program?
Absolutely, and that's where another variable comes into play. So enter some of the things we've been going through over the past 2 years, and we just have to be really careful about throwing the baby out with the bathwater, right? Because I also went back and took a look at our 3-5 math results from a few years prior to the pandemic, and our math results were near the top of the conference. So rather than just saying we need a new math program, let's put that in, that's an area where we just have to have a bit of caution and seeing as we come out of the impacts from the pandemic, do we quickly go back up to where we were before. So an example of that for 3-5 math is we saw a 16% increase in students who scored proficient or advanced in the Ford exam last school year. That's a significant increase. If we continue to see that, we'll get back to where we were, and we should be in a good place moving forward, and it would speak to me that our curriculum is serving us well. So some of that is, we can look prior to the pandemic and saying, yep, that's a place where we needed to intervene. 6-8 math, new math program. Some places are, let's hold tight. We have a program in place that has shown to be effective in the past at that level, like 3-5 math, and we just have to see how some of it plays out.
Well, this is something you and I can talk about more
Yeah.
moving forward or in the future. We don't have to continue to take the meeting to do it.
Great questions, though, I appreciate them.
They are great questions, thank you.
Yep.
So,
So should we make a motion?
yes, please.
With the district and building level balance scorecards for the 2022-2023 school year.
I'll second.
Motion by Heather and a second by Angie. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Passes 6-0. Safety and security.
Yeah, so the district's been in conversation with Lodi Police Department in regards to master keys and camera access. The memo attached summarizes those discussions. Administration recommends though that we table this item till we get some additional information regarding like the memorandum of understanding. So looking at our police department has asked if they initially asked if they could have a key that they would lock in their squad cars, a master key. They are now looking at probably not asking for that because of the cost of replacement and accessing our buildings to the Knox boxes that the fire department would use. But they still would like to have access to our camera system. And part of the board making a decision on that, we would want to have together a memorandum of understanding of what that would look like. And then the board can make a decision like, yep, we would like to give them access, or no, we're not going to do that. But I don't want to do that until I am able to like get actual language, and there's some schools I've reached out to who allow that and have a memorandum of understanding, and I was hoping to have that when this was placed on the agenda. I just wasn't able to get it from those school districts. So I would just recommend that we table this for now.
I'll move to table safety and security agenda item.
Second.
Motion by Christie, second by Angie. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? It's a 6-0. Neola Policy Services.
Yeah, so Neola is a policy service. The policy committee is unanimously recommending that the district go with Neola Policy Services to help ensure that we keep our board policies current and up to date. Policy committee felt that there was some upfront cost to making this change, but that the savings for the district after the transition and like legal cost would help ensure that our policies stay up to date, was worth it, and would probably save the district down in the long run. Because every time we make a policy change, it goes to legal counsel, where when Neola gives you policy, it's already vetted by legal counsel.
So we're not paying every time we
We're
ask
not
them?
paying every time, right? Now, again, when we go through Neola, we will still have the opportunity to look, we have to make all those policies ours. So we will have, one of the concerns the policy committee had is it's gonna take a lot of upfront time from the administration to review all those policies, modify them, like make them to us, and make sure that they align, and then I'll put them in place. So it'll take like a year, and so what'll happen is we'll kind of go through these policies, and if the board approves this, like we'll go through a section, the board will approve a first read, and then they will just set them aside until we go through all of those policies, and then at some point, when they're all done, we'll do a second read of all of them at the same time, and then the policy manuals switch to Neola, so you're not kind of dealing with two different kind of policy manuals.
So I don't sit on that committee, but what was the impetus for all this?
I
I saw the price,
Yep.
and I don't have anything to compare that against, but it seemed high.
Yeah, so the policy committee, when I first got on the board, or first got on the superintendent, we did a quick check policy, like that, just to make sure our policy's update. So we paid WASB, like they do it like for $4,500,
Yeah,
I
it's about
think.
45,
they will go through and do all your policies. And then you can pay for WASB, their policy reference manual, which we didn't do at the time. What happens when you do that policy quick check is they'll give you things that, these are things that need to be fixed immediately, these are things that you should be working on, and these are things you might want to think about. And then when they give you that, it was a reference to like their policy manual, like this policy manual, which you had to subscribe to, which was just $14,000 for 3 years. So it's very similar to what Neola charges. Otherwise, what happens is I get that information, it ends up being me asking for sample policies from 2 or 3 different districts, and then trying to figure out exactly where we're not in alignment without that guidance, and then we send it to legal counsel, and legal counsel tears it up and they charge us for it, and they send it back. And so there was just a lot of upfront cost to that, and then Neola makes sure most of our districts around us use it. They do a good job of making sure that stuff stays up to date, because it's really easy for policy not to stay up to date. So that was really the impetus behind it. So we had 2 years ago, Neola and WASB did a presentation to both, or to the policy committee. The policy committee asked me to do reference checks on both of them. Both of them were solid reference checks. People who had gone from WSB Neola really liked Neola compared to WSB. But then we kind of got into referendum planning, so we didn't go down that road because we were just busy doing other things. So this year we had 2 new members of the policy committee, and so we had Neola come back out and do a presentation again. Hopefully I'm answering your question. I just threw a lot of information at you, but that's kind of how it happened.
So it's very clear from the multiple presentations and all the information and the other committee members that once we get to the other side of Neola, it's cheaper, it's easier, it's better, right, for the district.
What does the district
It's
spend now
getting there.
on this policy? You talk about the legal expenses, and what is the district currently spending?
Yeah, it just depends on what we're going through. Let me pull up.
Yeah, you put together samples.
Yeah. Talk amongst yourself while I get this up. Sorry. I should have this up
Well, no,
somewhere.
but you said it was, for the WASB, it was $4,500 a year?
It was $4,500 to do the policy quick check, and then it's like $13,500 to do their over a 3-year period, which is in the ballpark. I think Neola is a 5-year period for $15,000.
Those of you that were on the policy committee and looking at the pricing, they have the bylaws and policies pricing for 3 years, and then it's got 3 years where it's not there. How,
Because you have to set the whole thing up in the beginning and get it all over, and then that's done.
so moving forward past August 2027, that bylaws and policies charge, you won't see those again. It's not something that comes
Because
back
then you're
over
in
time.
maintenance, then you're in the maintenance area then.
Well, they've got maintenance or semi-annual updates and bylaws and policies, so I mean, there
Right, because
are a
they-
couple of years where there's
Right.
just south of $9,000.
Yeah, it starts off being more expensive, and then, because it just takes a lot of time for them to work with us to transition over.
That's them coming out and helping and stuff.
I mean, again, if you tell me you spend $5,000 in legal fees a year to have somebody look over these policy things and it's a wash,
Yeah.
okay, sure, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so we looked at, like, one of the things, the committee asked me the same question, so they asked for a policy estimate. So it's hard to do after the fact, like go back and say, okay, what do we do? So for updates to complaints against school personnel, we did an update, the board approved it May 22, very cheap, right? Probably less than an hour for me, not counting the policy committee meeting, working on the policy, sending it to legal counsel. That cost us $150. That was a pretty simple one. Controversial issues policy, The legal bill was almost $700, but the amount of time reviewing policies from other districts was 3 hours, meeting with department chairs, drafting policy 6 hours, draft policy committee 1 hour, 4 hours, meeting with building reps. So this is just the staffing cost that came with it. 2 hours, documenting suggestions from building, incorporating them in the policy, draft policy, back to policy committee, additional suggestions, another 2 hours. Another 1.5 hours after meeting with legal counsel. So that one, again, the legal cost for that was almost $700, and then the amount of time, administrative time, to create a policy new from other policies was pretty significant. The public input policy, again, it was a little more straightforward. Legal counsel costs $570 to go through those different pieces of policy as well.
So all that stuff we wouldn't have, that would already be included instead
Yeah,
of all those.
yeah, unless we make it into a policy that's Lodi specific, then we would have to still look at some of ours. But everything that they give us is vetted by their legal counsel. So that's one of the upfront pieces of is the savings of that and the keeping policy up to date. Because I think one of the things, if you look at the presentation that's in there, it just shows you how many updates and things happen in K-12 education compared to most other fields.
This was a lengthy process, because this started last year with the policy committee when I was on it, so they've taken at least 2 years probably, and heard from both vendors and vetted out, like, they came and gave us presentations and things like that. So it was a lengthy decision process.
You use an example, was it Title IX? That
Yeah,
was-
so Title IX was very expensive. So we had, and it wouldn't surprise me if this happens again with this current administration. So the last administration flipped title, or changed Title IX policy. And that happened the first year I was superintendent, or as I was becoming superintendent. So they came out with sample regs in May, it might have been May, and then the rules really didn't come out till June, like middle of June, but you had to have policy in place by August 11th. So we had to pay for them through Boardman and Clark. We paid a lot of money for them to come through. And then after the fact, Boardman and Clark spent a lot of money helping us align all our other policies to the new Title IX policy, because it's referenced in all these other policies. So we spent a lot. I had to go back and what it was quite a bit of money from legal counsel, because it was just something that came down from the federal government we had to do. Now again, it wouldn't surprise me as we get to the end of this administration that a lot of those things flip in Title IX, and we have to implement a new Title IX policy.
That actually is coming in one of the Neola service that workshop that I was in. They
Yeah.
said there is one coming down for Title IX to change a bunch.
So it wouldn't surprise me at all, because there was just such significant change for the last administration, and that's sometimes what happens, right? You get a new administration, they make new policy. Regardless if I like that policy, don't like that policy, it really doesn't matter. It's the policy comes down, and we have to implement it at the board level. We are legally required to do it. That would have been covered under Neola. They would have, here's your Title IX policy, here's your alignments, done.
I think that's what sold me on it, was just knowing that it was a huge expense and it's uniform this way and it's consistent. And then it just frees him up to do
his time.
more stuff that he should be doing within the district and his job description. So that's why I was sold on it.
And the other piece of it for us is, again, our policy is very good. So when you meet with Neola or WSB, that's one of the first things they will tell you. The policy that we have, the policy work that's been done here has been very well done. And again, I would credit my predecessor with all of that. I mean, Chuck did a phenomenal job with policy, and I've tried to keep up with that as well. But again, as you look at across the landscape of education, more and more and more, the last presentation we went through was like, when they first get Neola started, a lot of school districts that were coming out had their policies were just a mess. Now there's many more school districts who are coming out who have great policy, but just are like, we need to keep it up to date, and we are looking at this service to do that.
So on their website, they list 304 schools in Wisconsin. 4 of those are CSIS, so that's 300. There's 424 schools in Wisconsin, so 300 out of 424 are with Neola.
But it does come at its expense, right? So that's one of the reasons it's taken so long for us to go through this as well, because we brought them, both those policy committees in, did those presentations, did reference checks. As I said, this document that I'm kind of referencing now is something that the committee asked me to get to, so we met last time before they would approve it. Let's walk through this piece as well. So it is, but it's also not something that we take lightly. Like it's an expense, right? So, but the feeling was it was expense that is offset by other expenses that we currently have.
So it would be helpful for me to know what the costs currently are versus what this cost is.
Yeah, and it goes, and the hard part of coming to just this is what the cost is. It depends on how much work we do on policy, right? So like I reach out to legal counsel, like I reached out on these 3 bills, I had to pull some of it apart. Some of it's like we talk about policy and then we talk about staffing issue and we talk about, well, it's all looped into one thing on our legal counsel bill. And it depends on how much policy work we do. We haven't done a lot of policy work in the last 3 or 4 months. But there was some last year, like where we spent a lot of time on policy, and then that bill gets a little bit bigger. One of the things we could track over time too, if the board wants to wait and do this down the road, it's something we can track over time a little bit more accurately, I guess I could say.
So that 16,400, is that up right away up front?
No, it's over 5 years.
Okay, it is, okay. I didn't know if it was 16,000 and then every year we pay. Okay, I see what you're saying.
I move to approve the Neola Policy Services.
I'll second.
Motion by Barb and a second by Christie. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? This is 6-0. Crew rental agreement.
Thank you, and I appreciate the discussion, because it is an expense. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Rick.
Yep, I built this contract a couple years back. In general, it's just a 2-year agreement between the district general operations budget and the crew program to have the ability to charge rent to the crew program, just like a community user. That's basically it in a nutshell.
I move to approve the 2023 through 2025 crew rental agreement.
I'll second.
Motion by Barb and a second by Heather. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Passes 6-0. Next is the WASB representative for CISA 10. I guess I'll take that one. So we have a board, CISA 10 is a board, and there's a rep, no, sorry, I apologize. CISA 10 has a rep to WASB at the state level, and we get to vote on who that person is. It was Bill Whipperforth in the past, Bill left, and so
It's Region 10.
It shouldn't be CISA, it should be Region.
Region, I believe.
No, but it's not your fault.
Confused.
That's why it shouldn't say CISA in there, it should say Region 10.
Okay.
WASB Region 10.
Okay.
So just to summarize that back up again. So we are a member of WASB. We are part of Region 10.
Thank you.
And in the past, we have the opportunity to vote for who represents you on that board, the WASB board for Region 10. In the past, Bill Whipperforth was most recently representative for Region 10. But since he is no longer on the school board, he had to resign that position because you have to be an active school board member to be there. So there are 2 people here who are running for Region 10 to represent you on the WASB board. So the question before you really comes down to, as you looked at those candidates, which one would you choose as a board, and which one of you wants to cast that vote?
Does anybody in the board know any of these
I know
people?
Sandy.
I know Sandy.
Sandy took over for Bill.
Yeah, so I know Sandy because she was the
president of the CISA 5 board for the 3 years or whatever that I was on that board. She is extremely efficient, conscientious, listens well. I think she would be a great candidate. I don't know the other person.
I don't either, that's how, I would have said this exact same thing for my little bit of.
Yeah, I think she would represent us well because she is a great listener, and coming from CISA 5, which I think represents our district well in general.
So you would endorse her?
I would endorse her.
Okay.
Tim is from Baraboo, and I've known him for about a year. We meet as a presidential board kind of thing, and he's a phenomenal guy too. So what his experience is, other than the board, right, the Baraboo board, I mean, he's been through all the positions on a Baraboo board. I don't know if he's ever been at the state level or the CISA level, other than what he wrote down below, so.
Well, I guess that was not too helpful. We got 2 really great candidates.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is great, which is great.
And then traditionally, Heather, you cast the vote, so, as the CISA 5 rep. Doesn't mean you have to, but that's traditionally how we did it.
Can we write this down, Lisha, on a piece of paper?
We can,
That
for
we
sure.
all,
For sure, yeah.
I don't know
We could
either
do that.
of
Give
us.
us some Post-it notes. Makes it easier.
It's not very large.
Yeah.
It's- When you're on the CISA board, CISA 5 is a very long, narrow, it goes way up north.
Marshfield and Stevens Point.
Marshfield, so it kind of just like, yeah. And so actually, the CISA 5 building is located in Portage, so it's very convenient for us. But some of the people drive an hour and a half to go to each meeting.
Here's the map.
Oh,
Convenient.
have it right there.
Look at
Yeah.
that.
So she's from somewhere.
Do y'all want to see?
It's got the sticky part on the outside.
Yeah, me too.
You want me to pass it?
Where's Wild Rose?
No.
Okay.
Try to find Wild Rose on this.
Yeah. So as long as you're collecting, we should.
I know, I was waiting for him to pass it
Oh.
down, taking a walk.
Or you're going around.
She just wants to get up and move.
I don't think Barb cares how which way you do it.
Thank you.
Throw it on the sticky side.
Are you gonna mess? Oh, let's watch her as she walks
It's on
over.
the map.
It is on the map?
There you go. Over on the east side.
About 2:30.
It is really interesting to talk to board members from other districts, especially like really small districts that are much smaller than ours, and obviously some that are larger than ours.
You want this back?
Yeah, I'll take it.
Send it back down.
Send it on.
Okay, so there you go.
There you go.
Takes the mystery out of it.
That takes the mystery. Did you cast that vote?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Well, Mo, is that, but that's up at Trapper's Turn on the.
No, it's at noon through Zoom or something.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's super easy to vote. You can go to the big meeting if you want, but
Okay.
to do the voting, it's like through Zoom on there.
Oh, okay, I'm glad you
We'll get you that
said that.
information.
Yes,
Because I saw that, I was just gonna go to the meeting.
if you're gonna, yeah.
Yeah, we'll see.
But I think the
Yeah.
vote takes place before,
so they can announce it.
introduce.
Okay. I would have looked it all over, but I did not look it up yet.
In the past, it's been super easy to vote.
Okay.
Vote, done.
Okay.
Okay, next, renaming contract review committee.
Yeah, so the Contract Review Committee has discussed the possibility of changing the name of their committee at several other meetings. The committee typically deals with staff handbook issues and personnel, and less frequently deals with contracts. Typically, when a contract is brought to the Contract Review Committee, it also goes to the Facility and Finance Committee as well, so the committees are duplicating their effort. So there's discussion about the possibility of changing the committee's name to the Personnel Committee. The committee would continue to work through staff handbook, but also work on other personnel matters and turn their contract work over to the Facility and Finance Committee. So after these discussions at these multiple committee meetings, the committee voted unanimously to recommend to the full board that the name of the committee be changed from Contract Review Committee to Personnel Committee.
approval of the renaming of the contract review committee to the personnel committee.
I'll second.
Motion by Barb, second by Angie. Further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? We have a new committee name, 6-0. There are no first policies or second policies. We tabled them. There are no gifts and donations. There are committee reports though. CISA 5 rep.
Yes, I did not make it to the meeting again. Adam, don't yell at me. I'm gonna go in November, but I have been in contact with them, and they actually had a technology representative, and I'm gonna get information about that and just pass it on to you if you have anything. And then, I just don't know, is it okay if I reach out to administration and just say if they ever need anything from CISA 5, or?
Yeah, you're the
And
rep.
I'm the only one that gets newsletters, right? That's not everybody, right?
No,
So
the
I can
whole-
pass information on.
We pass
and-
the district, Mo sends out the newsletter to the entire district.
Okay, so they see all that. Okay, so maybe I shouldn't be too naggy and say, do you want?
No, because the email, right, people don't always read that forward thing, so.
Maybe if I see
you
something
wanna-
in particular.
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
And so one of the things you could also do is touch
I
base.
don't wanna be annoying.
No, but you can touch base with us as administrators as well. So for example, we have CISA 5 superintendent meetings, so we meet monthly
Yep.
typically.
We just met recently,
Yeah,
right?
Friday, I didn't go.
Okay.
Because it was in Wisconsin Rapids.
Okay.
Right, versus being in Portage.
But
And
the
it was
other one that was in
homecoming Friday, so I
Portage-
didn't think I could go. But yeah, early in the month, or the month of September, I went to the one in Portage.
And I was there that day, later in the
Yep,
afternoon.
you came in later that afternoon, yep. And I'll go to the one in November. Typically I go, but even that one, there's a virtual piece sometimes that they do statewide
Okay.
on Friday, because typically those meetings on all CISAs happen at the same time. So like they'll have their individual meetings, and then like at 10:30, they'll have a statewide speaker somewhere in the state, and actually CISA 5 runs it. Jeremy's the one who coordinates it for the entire state, so.
Doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, right. So like I was able to sit in for an hour with DPI's finance team, and they had a couple other things this past week, even though I didn't make it all the way up to Rapids.
Okay. All right. I just didn't want to step on toes. Okay.
That's how we learn, right? And just going through it and having conversations, so yeah, feel free.
Co-curricular.
Co-curricular report, cross-country. The cross-country team had a busy last month of competition. A major highlight was both the boys and girls cross-country teams winning the Rio Invitational. The boys team finished just 2 points ahead of second place Wayland Academy, and the girls finished 19 points ahead of second place North Fond du Lac. The boys JV team also took home first place in their division. The cross-country team travels to Columbus tonight before heading to Wisconsin Heights on Saturday for the Capital Conference meet. Tennis. Lodi High School hosted tennis subsectionals on Monday, October 3rd. The team placed second at subsectionals, coming up just 2 points behind first place Aquinas. Lodi's number 2 doubles team took home first place in their bracket. The season came to an end on Thursday, October 6th at sectionals in Edgewood, with no Lodi players advancing to the state tournament. Football. The Lodi football team is 7-1 with a conference record of 5-1. The team clinched a playoff berth with a 40-7 win over Bigfoot on September 30th. Lodi's only loss came to Columbus. However, the team bounced back with a 42-7 win over Naglaris Monticello this past Friday at the homecoming game. They will wrap up the regular season this Friday in Lake Mills. Soccer. Varsity boys soccer team has an overall record of 5-10-4 and a conference record of 0-4-3. Team's most recent win came in a 2-0 victory over Richland Center at home. They wrap up the regular season tomorrow night at home versus Wisconsin Heights Barneville. They will take on Living Word Lutheran on Thursday, October 20th in the first round of regionals. Lodi will play host to the sectional final game on Saturday, October 29th at 1. Volleyball. Volleyball team has an overall record of 6-23 with a conference record of 2-7. Recent wins include a 2-1 win over Wisconsin Heights and a huge 3-2 win over neighboring Poinette. They will wrap up regular season play this week with a home game on Tuesday versus Watertown Luther Prep and an away game at Columbus on Thursday. Swimming. The swim team picked up their first win of the 2022 season on Thursday, September 29th, with a 73-53 victory over Portage. They will host their final duel of the year on Thursday versus River Valley. Esports, the Lodi Esports team is 0-2 with losses to Jefferson and Fox Valley Lutheran. This week they take on Bigfoot. This fall's esports game is Super Smash Brothers. Musical has been busy rehearsing for this year's production of The Wizard of Oz. This year's performances will be in the Performing Arts Center on Saturday, November 12th, Sunday, November 13th, Friday, November 18th, and Saturday, November 19th. That's the report.
Thank you. Just to add to the volleyball, I wasn't in the report, but volleyball's game tomorrow night is a cancer fundraiser for the Cancer Society, so they're doing a Miracle Minute where they go around collecting money, so more people there the better.
Nice.
So it's for a good cause.
OSC.
I was unable to attend because I was sick last week, but Eric introduced himself as the new principal to the board. They shared that the students have begun working on their first project, which is recycling. They've been doing local field studies on Fridays. And the biggest thing is we need members. We need board members. We are struggling to fill all of our board roles because we don't have enough members.
What makes a board member? What do you have to do to be a board member? Just be a community member, like in our district, or just?
It's pretty.
Because you don't have to have a kid in OSC. You could just.
Not at all.
So we could just ask people.
Yes.
In fact, I think we currently only have one person, maybe two that have children in OSC.
So it's a board meeting every month?
Yep, once a month, Wednesdays, the last Wednesday of the month, I think, at 6:30 at OSC.
And I would argue they need community input, like business input and things like that, right? So someone who's running a business would be perfect.
Yep,
right?
absolutely.
It could just be a teacher or a mom or anybody, but that board has gotten too heavy in teachers sometimes, right? And too
Yeah.
heavy in other
Yeah.
areas. and
It's
it
fairly
doesn't-
well
yeah.
balanced right
Yeah, good.
now. Probably with more like alumni parents, and then I think, like I said, I think there's 2 current parents.
Okay.
But then we have a couple of community members, but it's just not enough.
Right.
A couple of our board members only participate part-time.
So it's one meeting, they're not on committees like we are, kind of thing. Okay.
Contract review.
All right.
No, it's not contract.
No?
It's personnel.
Oh, yeah, personnel. Okay, yeah, but it says contract review, so. Well, we talked about the name change, actually. So we have been talking about the school calendar for next year, right, is that 23, 24? And there's a question of certain days. We always have this come up with a calendar that there may be like, should there be a day in October off that would add a day to the calendar? So there's a few options, and what we had discussed doing and we're planning to do is sending a survey. We initially talked about sending a survey just to the staff, but then after discussions at the committee level, we recommended so that we would like to have a survey sent both to parents and staff, and it's gonna be one survey so that we're not having the results of this survey and the results of this survey, and then now we're pitted against each other. It's like all the people involved are going to have a survey. So it has to do with when our days off and how long school goes busy.
Yes.
And, all of these questions affect the people who are actually in those buildings or have kids in those buildings, so it's great that they have an opportunity to have input on that.
And it'll be a short survey, so please take
Yeah, don't worry.
4 questions.
Four questions.
Not 4 pages.
Won't take you
4
long,
questions.
won't take you long. And then we were talking about the work of the committee going forward. We will be in a process of reviewing the staff compensation models, looking at them, what is being implemented successfully in other districts, what's the staff input on our end from that, and it's gonna be a process, it's gonna be a lengthy process. When I came on the school board 4 years ago or 5, a long time ago, there was kind of the tail end of like a major revamping of the compensation model. And it doesn't feel like it's been that long, but it's been a while, and time to relook at it, so. We
That's a big job.
It is a huge job.
That's a huge job.
Yep, and, yeah, it's real hard, so we'll keep you updated.
Yes. Curriculum.
Oh, well, do you wanna do that, Angie? You want me to, I guess, Terry isn't gonna be speaking.
Oh, Terry, oh, yeah, okay. Oh, yeah, okay. I can, or would you like? No, okay. So, when our last curriculum committee meeting, we had the social studies department. So each, curriculum committee meeting, we hear from a variety of different departments, kind of want to hear what's new, what's going on, what they might need. So we had, okay, this is switched around a little bit. Yeah, so Joe and Nick were there to talk about the social studies, what's going on, academic standards, all that kind of stuff. It was great. I don't know if there's anything else you want me to say about that. And we did have a really interesting really interesting discussion from Jen Morgan with the English as a second language. It was really great to talk to her about what does it look like on a day-by-day basis when you have a fairly large number of students who have.
It's gone up too.
Yeah, gone up dramatically. And it's kind of one of the things that made an impression on me is like, you just don't know who's gonna come into your district, this week and needing to meet their needs and, not being able to plan ahead too much because it depends on which students happen to be moving into the district. And so, I think the big take home from this discussion is we need to be looking at supporting that program probably substantially more than it is. There's we don't have 5 kids in it, there's.
She's going to all 4 buildings and trying to coordinate.
The triage model. Yeah,
44 right now.
Yeah.
But
Last year we had 44 ESL learners.
okay, so there's even more now, isn't there though?
It's gone up this year.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
but we won't know until we get the access test in December.
Okay.
Exactly what our numbers are.
So, and then we also looked at the balanced scorecards as we did tonight. So, and we looked at a draft calendar for professional development. Did we?
The collaboration day schedule,
Oh,
Friday schedule
right,
we looked
right.
at.
Well, you just did 2 reports on 2 committees, so good job.
Thanks.
I suppose I could have done that, sorry. No, you just keep
I'm
talking.
trying to drag it out of my
And even you said
brain.
you didn't want to talk a lot tonight, but you worked so hard. I'm making you do it, sorry.
All right, I'm done.
Facility and finance.
Vince updated us on the poll that they had worked on that day. We looked over the Pillar 5 operational excellence of the district scorecard and made a decision to not discuss defeasance this year.
And policy.
As you know, we had the discussion on the policy services from Neola, so I won't belabor that issue. We had further conversation about advertising on school property. We talked about the different areas again of what we could do. We did come to a decision that we're not going to advertise in the stadium, and we realize that is a classroom as well. And if our reasoning for the gym is not to advertise there, same with the stadium. We did table this to investigate a little bit further. We talked about like advertising on the live stream as well and seeing that, going down that avenue, just to bring in some revenue. That could be probably, in my opinion, one of the better options to have. But we tabled it, so we will come back with more information. Then we had a great conversation about our policy on tobacco-free schools. We updated that and we added verbiage like not just smoking but vaping, because that's different now. It's evolving. And we asked that you go back to Mr. Bilsey from Melcat to see if if we require the in-depth program after the 3rd offense, so it would be a second time they would go through, what the statistics of that are. Like, is it just a waste of time, or is it actually better to go through the program a second time? We just didn't have the data at the meeting to talk about that, but this was in length. We had a good conversation about this, just making sure that changing this around a little bit was in the best interest of our kids, and we came to the conclusion that it was, and that was about it.
Thank you. And then future meetings, remember, next 2 Mondays we'll be back. So we'll be here for...
Next Monday here, 5:30 for something to eat and conversation, and we start at 6, and then following Mondays at 7 o'clock in the other day. And we'll have the PAC as a backup if we have enough people that we need to move. Otherwise, we try to allow the PAC to be free for a musical.
That is it? We are going to reconvene in closed session and finish.
I'll make a motion to reconvene into closed session. Do I have to do the whole big thing? I make a motion to adjourn to closed session pursuant to Wisconsin statute sections 19.85, 1CE and F to consider employment, compensation, and performance evaluation data. Administrators, teachers, support staff, coaches, crew to negotiate regarding specified public business contracts and agreements.
A second.
Motion by Barb, second by Christie. Any further discussion? Roll call, Scott.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Good. We're in closed session. Thank you. 6-0.